Are we ready?
I think so. I think we're good now.
Are you sure?
No.
Oh, okay. So as long as we're confident, that's all that matters.
Exactly.
Okay. As you know, this is The Measure of an Episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek genuine Star Trek and not just how, I can't rid myself of DS9.
Yeah. Well, and I loved, sorry. And we do that with, sorry, who are you?
I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan. And we do that with 3 criteria. Those 3 criteria are, is there sci-fi required for the plot to happen? And is that sci-fi explored in some way? And is that sci-fi novel or unique? And is there a moral or ethical dilemma that a character faces? I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And this week we watched Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 3, Episode 6, Hear All, Trust Nothing. Quark's in this episode. Kira's in this episode.
The end.
Yeah, basically. Let me read the thing. The Cerritos crew... I'll start over. The Cerritos crew unexpectedly spends a day on Deep Space Nine.
That's true. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. That's the only thing that Paramount Plus decided to give to us.
Right.
So it's really hilarious because I loved the joke. Like, they set up the whole, I would think the whole cold open was basically a DS9 joke, because they say we get to the part where the Admiral, or what's his name? Admiral Buenamigo.
Yep.
Which is my favorite new Admiral, or my new favorite Admiral. And he orders her to go help with diplomacy with this other race in the Gamma Quadrant or something like that. And he said, you got to go to DS9. And then they get to DS9 and they basically play the theme.
Uh-huh. Oh, fully. Yeah.
And they don't even play it in the background. They turned it all the way up.
Right.
And I was like, oh, they're just sort of fan servicing us now.
Uh-huh.
And then they do the thing with, we have to just drive around and look like we're in awe of the pylons. and then it ends and they come back to it. And I'm not just going to describe the joke, but I love that that was the joke. Because they were essentially making fun of not just one episode or one character or one part of DS9. It was all of DS9 in that moment.
Well, yes. And it was very much a, yes, we are fan servicing. Here you go.
Yeah, shameless.
Yeah.
Completely shameless fan service, which
It was great. It was great. Yep.
I think this might be my favorite episode so far of season 3.
Yeah. For me, what would have made this so much better, and I understand why the writers didn't do this. I understand that they didn't want the vitriol, and I don't think that they had the cojones to do this, but if that was the only thing that we saw happening on DS9 was just that aerial view of the station, and then the rest of the episode had to do with Lower Decks being on the Cerritos while everybody else was in DS9.
That would have been funny. I mean, I would have appreciated them cutting back to a ship circling the pylons with a theme, just cut
just every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Every commercial break.
Yeah. You always have to be in majestic awe of DS9 with the theme playing in the background. Because it is true. It is true. It's just a space station. And
right.
We're always just sort of touring the space station. Okay.
Just trying to find a parking space. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It is true. And it was, of course, nice to see Kira and Quark as themselves, or at least the actors playing themselves. I wondered, because I was listening very intently when Quark makes his appearance. You're like, oh, there he is. He showed up for it. It's great about, just as an aside, it's great about all of the stunt casting. I guess it's not stunt casting. It's just casting of old live action characters.
Uh-huh.
They all seem to show up. It's
right.
never sort of all right, what do you want me to do? You want me to
they're not doing it for a paycheck. Yeah.
They got one take of it, and that's what they had to use, so it's all spliced together and everything. Right. I like that. But anyway, I wondered, because in the live action show of DS9, I'm sure you've seen it, Quark, or the actor, Armin Shimmerman, has to wear a mouthpiece with his little spiky teeth.
Oh, this is a good question. Yeah.
And I wondered, part of the Quark experience is him not being able to enunciate.
Fully enunciate, right.
Eloquate?
Elocute?
Is that a word? Elocute. It is cute.
It's Spanish. Elocute.
So I wondered if he put in the mouthpiece when he was recording just to give us the full experience. It kind of sounded like it at times, but then other times it didn't. So
Right.
If you can get on that, find out about that.
Well, I
would
wonder,
be great.
like, what I would suspect based on what you just said is because it's a half hour, because the dialogue is so quick, there were lines that he could not get out fast enough with the mouthpiece. And so they said, just take it out. Like, we need the line more than we need the proper enunciation from Quark.
I guess I would have gone. I mean, it sounded just like Armin Shimmerman. I
Right.
think. I don't think he had a mouthpiece on for any of it. And same thing with Kira.
You don't think she had her mouthpiece in? Oh,
I think she had her regular teeth in for this one.
What was interesting about this episode, just seeing Quark and seeing Kira, like, DS9 should have been an animated series. Like, after seeing these characters, I 100% believe that this show could have continued as an animated series because all of the characters are just slight caricatures of actual individuals. You know, like Quark's reactions to everything were a little bit over the top, but they were still very Quark-like. And Kira's aggression towards Shax was a little bit over the top, but still very Kira-like. And just imagine Odo just being a little bit more grumblier, you know, and Cisco being just a little bit more, you know, panting at everything. Like,
well, it is sad. We'll never get Odo. I don't know if Odo's been on the show before, but he will not be on the show going forward, unfortunately.
I know. Well, and it was kind of sad because I guess it was probably a debate and they decided against it, and that's fair. But being a shapeshifter, you could have had him be anything and then just show Odo, you know, and not have him talk.
Just have him in the background.
Yeah.
About to say something and then get interrupted.
And getting interrupted or cut off. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, going back to what you said about DS9 sort of being appropriate for animation because all of the characters seem so caricatures of what normal live action. I think, though, that that's kind of the magic of Star Trek because you have these ridiculous aliens and sometimes ridiculous scenarios that these people are in, and they somehow manage to take it seriously and it works. I would think that Star Trek could become a little bit like Star Wars in that it just becomes a farce. It becomes a fantasy, and it's just hijinks, kind of like what the show is, Star Trek Lower Decks. But I think that's what I like about it. I like that, no, Quark, even though he has this ridiculous thing on his face, he's a real person. He's a real character. He's not just a mouthpiece for hijinks or a mouthpiece for a joke. Same thing with all of them. You know, it's just that's what I think why a lot of people like this and why there's this dichotomy between Star Wars and Star Trek. Star Trek, like, they take it seriously and they want it to be real. They want it to feel real. Not that Star Wars isn't real, but real in that other way, in the hard science fiction way. And I think that's kind of where the line splits. It's sort of, is it fun or is it real? You know, we had a discussion about, I remember what it was. It was sort of the idea of if you go over to a Doctor Who viewing for an episode versus a Star Trek
I do remember
viewing.
this. Okay.
Yeah. And the Doctor Who is going to be fun. You know, there's going to be people like laughing and throwing popcorn at each other during the thing and laughing about how, the Doctor Who, he's gotten into another pickle.
Right. Everybody
Let's
take a
talk
shot.
about-
He did this. Like, he pulled out some screwdriver. Right.
Yeah. With the Star Trek, it's going to be, if you talk, you will have to leave. So, you know, and don't bother coming back.
Right.
You know, it's that kind of thing. It's those, that's the thing. And I feel like that's the difference. Even though there are just as many ridiculous aliens in Star Trek as Star Wars, we buy it. It's not there just for eye candy. It's like, oh, that's a cool looking alien. He's got a thing coming out of his forehead. It's like, no, that's Worf. And he's got this whole backstory, you know, not invented by a wiki, but like written down somewhere by the people who invented, you know what I mean? Like, that's the difference. And I like that.
Yeah.
That's why I take Star Trek seriously. Not Star Wars.
Right. I mean, if you go back through our 130 plus episodes, you can see how serious you take all this stuff. So yeah, you're definitely putting your money where your mouth is.
This is serious business.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we're here. That's what our job is.
Right. So Rutherford, clearly the commensurate DS9 fan, apparently. It was more of a theme park for Rutherford than it was just a ship or a place. That's,
Right.
You know, there are many. There are at least 8 other of these.
Right? At
Although-
least, yeah, that's true.
They're not. I don't think they all look like that. Right? They're not. They all look like probably regular space stations. Is my guess. Right? They're not going to all be Cardassian.
No, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, this one.
So maybe that's why.
Right. This one is definitely novel. Yeah.
That's why he wants to be there. It's like a theme park on the edge of the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
But then Rutherford, of course, what's great is that thankfully, as I had predicted in the last episode, that they continue Rutherford's conspiracy plot in full force in this episode. We now know twice as much as we did in the past episode.
Are you saying double of nothing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we learned something in the past episode. We learned nothing. It was as though nothing happened, which
Right.
pissed me off.
Yeah.
Because not only did they do as I said and jump ahead 1 year and all the different characters are doing their own different adventures, they didn't even do that. They didn't even mention it. It's not even like reference in a side line, right?
Right.
It's like, come on. Like
Yeah.
they dropped a pretty big bomb.
Right. I mean, it does make a little bit of sense insofar as they're doing something that requires their focus to be elsewhere. So it's not, it's more believable that they wouldn't bring it up. And in the middle of their engineering stuff, Tendi would be like, "Hey, so how are you feeling about last week when you had to like get rid of your previous personality?"
Well, not so much reference the whole plot line, but we know now that Rutherford was part of a conspiracy. So why not just have him recognize a voice around the corner? Be like, wait, I know that voice. I don't know why I know that voice. My computer banks aren't telling me who that is, but this is relevant. And then that's all you need.
Right. Right.
That's all you need. Like you can move on with the plot.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that,
No, true story.
unfortunately. And then it was really weird when the captain shakes left hands with the aliens.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Okay.
They shake left hands.
Right.
Which is clearly a reference because this species has no use of their right hand.
Okay.
So you bought it.
Yeah.
See, that's all they had to say.
Right.
You bought
Right.
it. That's all they had to say.
Yeah.
Right? But they didn't say anything. And so it's just a weird animation problem. Right? They probably were solving an animation problem.
Oh, for sure.
they're
Like, right. What makes the most amount of sense is they animated it. They realized that they were like either through editing or through reviewing. They realized that they were coming from the wrong positions, and so they flipped the animation.
Yeah. It takes me out of it. You know?
Sure. And so,
You're not supposed to do that.
right. So just as they're walking towards them, just have that little quick line of saying, "Remember, you have to shake hands with your left hand because they don't use their right when shaking hands."
Right. Exactly. That's all you have to do. It's so easy to do.
Right.
Man, we should work for this show. Think about how much better it would be.
Well, it's amazing how often that comes up in animation in general, and it is one of those things that can be easily just hand waved away with a single line of dialogue.
So, Star Trek accidentally is having an existential crisis right now
Okay.
with this episode.
Okay.
With a throwaway line.
Uh-oh.
And I don't remember his name, but it's the other Tendi.
Mesk
Whatever.
was his name. Yeah.
What are they called? Not orbitals. Orbitals?
Orions?
Orions. Are they from Orion?
That's a good question.
Like
I
the
don't know.
constellation.
You know that even though I look things up, I can't predict what questions you're going to ask me, right?
You're supposed to know what I'm going to ask you.
Otherwise, why are we doing this podcast?
I know. Why are people listening to this? Anyway, so it's with his tool, his Orion tool, his pirate tool.
Right.
Right?
I'm with you. His dong. Yeah.
Yeah. His ding dong. And he says, I got a religious exemption to be able to carry this around.
Right.
And this, of course, is somewhat indicative of the times, not the New York Times, but the times
current
around
times,
us
right,
that we are
right.
in. Yes.
Yes.
Anyway, this is the most un-Star Trek thing that I think Lower Decks has ever done. Because as we've heard, many people say who are involved intimately with Star Trek
Right.
that religion is not part of Starfleet. It is part of the Federation because there are species who are still religious. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that being an officer in Star Trek that I don't think you're allowed to express religion. Not that it is anti-religion, just it's not a part of. I don't think Starfleet acknowledges religion.
No, it's a problem that that has been addressed before, like it's been discussed before, because Worf is very religious.
I feel like he's customary. I don't know if he's religious. I always got the sense that he enjoyed practicing the practices of Klingons, but not that he was praying to Kahless type of thing. And also, Kahless was a real person.
Well, yes, so was Jesus.
Right, but in the sense of the reason that they acknowledge him are all the things that he did were like the things that they can prove that he did, not the supernatural things that he does. I actually don't know, but it doesn't seem like Worf is religious to the Klingon culture. That he just practices it. He wants to belong,
right,
in that way. But I always thought that there is no, like we've heard them say, there is no religion in Star Trek, meaning in Starfleet, because obviously there's religion. So it just made me wonder. It seemed like they abandoned it for the joke, right? Because you're not allowed to carry around this actually kind of cool tool that would seem like better than a phaser.
Right, you should carry it around, yeah.
Yeah. It's like sort of a Swiss Army knife type of thing. It's like it's a phaser and also can do all these other things where a phaser can just do one thing.
Yeah, and pliers to help you pull out a tooth.
Yeah, it's great.
It's something that has come up a couple times, just about the religious exemption, because they do say like there's no religion, there's no currency, everyone gets along great. But like when Ensign Ro came on, that was one of the first things that Riker said, like you have to take off your earring. But then Worf is allowed to keep his sash. It seems to be based on what the episode needs rather than a consistent through line.
Which is unfortunate. It's really too bad because I enjoyed watching Star Trek.
Oh, are we done now?
Can't watch it anymore. Yeah. Sorry. I feel like it was maybe a little bit of commentary on the times that we're in, a religious exemption. I feel like those are happening more and more.
Right. Yeah, I totally see what you're saying, but I think also religious exemptions have come up before in either DS9 or Voyager.
No examples?
No, none come to mind, but being above Bajor, where there were so many people who were religious, and with Sisko having to deal with being an emissary, like I've got to think that there had to have been at least one in the almost 100 episodes where there was a religious exemption discussed for Starfleet.
The fact, though, that the Bajorans aren't religious, we've covered this before.
Right, they're just factual.
It's more like government, right? Because the beings that they pray to and worship are real and is not faith-based. It's real. The stuff they do, we see them do it all the time.
Right.
A Starfleet member became one, which I guess means he's no longer in Starfleet.
Yeah. Is that a Starfleet exemption for the religion?
Well, it's that he wouldn't get one. Can I have a Starfleet religious exemption to become a god?
Right.
They're going to be like,
we don't believe in religion.
Oh, yeah? Then he does something.
But the people...
Sorry, I just came running from a very far away.
But he's also kind of being wiggled as he's panting. Because...
yeah, it's like he's tickling his son or something,
I'm sorry, I don't know why he's here. Speaking of which, I don't like when they're this deep of this much of a wink to the audience, where Rutherford was sitting above Tendi and Mesk, and he, at the promenade, and he made some comment about how like all he needs is a junior reporter to talk to, or he wished he had a junior reporter to talk to, or something like that. It was a great little joke, but like, is that how deep his encyclopedic knowledge of Deep Space Nine goes? Is that is typically where Jake Sisko hung out when he was doing his junior reporting?
Well, and Jake Sisko is still young. He's not 50 and has written in his memoirs what he used to do.
Right, as he waits for his dad to come back? Right.
Right. Like he's still in his 20s, right?
Yeah, probably.
I would guess maybe late 20s.
Yeah, late 20s, early 30s, yeah.
Because we know now that Voyager is back, right? Or at least almost back.
Right, they're close enough, right. They're close enough that, we know everything.
So where is he getting his information from, Rutherford? Is he just here? Like, why is that part of the mythos of Deep Space Nine is where, like, I don't understand.
Yeah. And how would you be so excited to go to Deep Space Nine and not look for the changeling?
Right. That's the coolest part.
Right, exactly. Like they have a changeling on staff.
Right. Or go into the holosuites, you know, which maybe they do. By the way, speaking of holosuites and speaking of Quark's bar, Boimler, I think that they are slowly insinuating with each passing episode that he's like loaded. He comes from a rich family. And once again, I know that he even says it in this episode that we do not use currency in Starfleet.
Right.
But he's got his own vineyard where all of the employees are throwing themselves at him for sex. Has the same kind of thing going on when he's playing, what's the name of the game?
Dabo?
Yeah.
Well, and even Mariner, the group that she was hanging out with, you know, they're like, we want to talk to you about Boimler. And she's like, oh, you want to make fun of him? And they're like, no, like, is he single? And she's like, oh, okay, I'm going to keep drinking.
Right. And that's the last we'll hear. But but I feel like they're saying that he's sort of this, not a real prince, but like a prince of industry type of thing. Like his dad must be, I mean, have you ever met his dad? Has that ever happened?
Not to my knowledge, but yeah.
Yeah. That there's this mysterious kind of pedigree that he's a part of. I don't know. I want to know more because they keep hinting at this. And I don't want it to just be for the sake of a joke. I want it to be something real, you know?
Well, right. That it's not just a running gag, that there is an actual payoff somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That there's a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, speaking of badass, so moving on to Tendi, who is also now a badass of a different color, right? And she is always sort of this optimistic person who seems to be kind of hapless in her optimism, but turns out that she actually comes from a family of pirates and can whoop ass. That's what we learn.
Yes.
I love this.
Right.
I love that she has this thing. But what I hate about this is just like Rutherford, we're not going to hear about it ever again until it's narratively convenient.
Well,
right?
For me, what's disappointing about this is it turns out that all of these Lower Decks characters are secretly badasses.
Right. No reason to be in the Lower Decks. Like they all should have some reason to be promoted and utilized better by the crew or by the ship.
Right.
Yeah. I don't understand. I mean, it's good for the joke. It's good for the episode, for the moment. But I feel like they're just kind of creating it, kind of like a la Lost. It's like, what if there's a hatch? That's a good idea. Put it in there.
Right. And what happens next?
Quiet. You know?
That's not the question.
I should hear typing. Yeah, why don't I hear typing?
I don't remember if I've said that on the podcast or not, but I've told you like that was how they ended season 1. And, you know, and they were like, they found the hatch and then the season ended and they were like, what if it lights up? And they were like, well, okay, so what's inside? And they're like, I don't know. That's a problem for the season 2 writers.
Right. Which is really weird because you'd think that they'd want to be those people.
Well, I think they were.
The people who are.
I think it was like, we'll figure it out over the season break. They came back and like, okay, what's inside?
I mean, we make fun of it that way, but that must have been what it was, right?
That is what it was. Like, I'm genuinely telling you, like there was an interview and they were saying that that's what they did. Like they came up with ideas and they put them in the show and they were like, okay, now why is it there?
It's funny because it's not surprising to any degree to me to learn that is actually real, yet it infuriates me exponentially.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, like it is just that confirmation. Like in previously in your mind, you know, it's like, that can't be what they really did. But like, what if? That would be so infuriating. And it's like, oh, that is what they did. Okay, so yeah, that is infuriating.
Yeah. We should do a podcast on Lost.
We totally should. If there's anybody who wants to hear that, we would love to do a podcast. We already have a premise in mind, very similar to this one, but yeah, we even have a name for it and everything. So please let us know if you want us to do a podcast on a show that ended 15 years ago.
Well, and we have a name. And it's a great name. The name is probably better than the podcast will be, but we're not going to tell you what it is. You have to ask for it. By the way, nobody called in about, nobody gets their $10 about those who said, yeah, Lower Decks is my introduction to Star Trek and this podcast. Nobody called in.
So follow up then, let us know if it wasn't your introduction to Lower Decks.
And it's like a lottery. It keeps compounding. So it's $20 now. You get $20.
Yeah, that casts a wider net. So, if you're listening to this podcast and we are not your introduction to Lower Decks, let us know. TheMeasureOfAnEpisode at gmail.com. There's so many people that are like doing measure episode or measure of an episode, and like
all these other podcasts that don't have the in front of it are getting all of our mail.
Yeah, exactly.
But while we're at it, everybody go leave a comment or a rating at Apple Podcasts or at Spotify. It really helps us out. If you enjoy the show, and like I said before, even if you don't enjoy the show, do us a favor. Go out and rate the podcast because it helps us out tremendously. And we want to keep the lights on in here. So go do it.
Please.
Be a pal.
I will say, literally, the lights are off where I am right now. My computer is not plugged in. It is running off battery power. I am seeing everything through the blinds in my window.
And you're only seeing in black and white. Is that right?
Yes.
That was extra.
I have older vision. Yeah, so it's gone to black and white.
Right. Okay, so I want to talk about Mariner's girlfriend, Jennifer.
Okay.
Jenny, as she so hates. And I do like, I for some reason I liked this whole thing that she was just, could not stand the insufferability of these women who were doing their...
Mariner or Jennifer?
Mariner. Okay. We only learn later that Jennifer can't stand it either.
Spoiler.
Yeah, which seems convenient for the plot.
Like, why are they your friends if you find them so obnoxious, right?
Yeah, exactly, especially to that level of being
I know.
so insufferable. But I love that when Mariner gets the go-ahead to start just stunning everybody, that we see Mariner sort of in the foreground, like just stunning anybody she can find, and Jennifer is gleefully clapping in the background. Yay! It's just really funny to me.
The two things I liked about this whole thing, the first one was the dance, how it was called Kobayashi Marooned.
Yeah, I thought it was just maroon because the color of her leotard was maroon.
Oh, okay. And I took it as like being like there is no right way to do the dance. Like you're just an island unto yourself, so you're marooned. Maybe it was maroon just because of the color, but regardless, I love that it was just a play on that word.
I also like that it was she was moving herself emotionally with every movement that she did. Right. She was like it's just like, ooh, oh, yeah. like every movement.
Oh, that's what my body's doing this time. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too was how the friend like could not piece together that like being unconscious and her having a phaser went hand in hand. Like, she's like, you breathe less when you're unconscious. She's like, so what does that have to do with it? And then gets shot. Like,
yeah. Also, these are all members of the crew. These aren't just friends. Like,
right. It's not like they hang out at DS9. Yeah.
And I like that it was all just sweatshirts. And they all have the paraphernalia, the Star Trek paraphernalia, or the
Doritos. Yeah.
What do they call that? Where it's like merch, the merchandise.
Okay.
So I'm sure there's a million references that I missed, but I've been working on myself. I've been working on trying to stay calm and collected as the episode starts, that I don't have to start furiously typing and Googling every time somebody says something that I don't recognize.
Yeah,
and it worked.
You put your computer on sleep, you put your phone on airplane mode, you have your stress ball, you've got your brown paper bag. Like,
I throw on Headspace, my meditation app. And I have Andy read me the script of the episode instead of it actually playing in front of me.
Yeah. And who's Andy?
Andy is the narrator on Headspace.
Oh, nice. Okay. So quick side note, Mesk, I was like, this guy is in the episode way too much for it to just be some kind of day worker. And it was Adam Pally. If you saw him, you'd be like, oh, okay, I know that guy. But I don't know if there's anything that he's been in that you would be like, oh, okay, that's him. Yeah, like, did you see Sonic the Hedgehog?
Oh, he played the hedgehog?
He did.
Oh.
You're like, oh, I know that guy. Sure, he's been in lots of videos.
Are you talking about Cyclops from X-Men? He was in Sonic the Hedgehog.
He was. You're right. But no, if you only saw the trailers, you wouldn't know who he was.
Well, I got nothing else.
Okay.
But I enjoyed the episod. I thought I chuckled.
Yeah.
During the episode.
Yeah, I did too. I'm still not a proper Star Trek, right?
No.
Yeah.
Unfortunately not. But fun.
Oh yeah, always.
I don't know if I'm just sort of falling victim to the whole, hey, that's DS9. I know that.
Well,
and that's it.
Right.
Like,
so therefore it's a good episode?
Well, therefore I enjoy it.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I don't want that to be the reason I enjoy it. I want it to be other reasons too. I mean, I have to say that like the plot lines just aren't that, they're not super interesting in terms of tickling our balls, a little bit. It's like, it's the setting, like we were talking about last episode.
Yeah, it's the setting and it's what the characters are doing rather than like the conflict that they're facing, and how they're reacting to it. It's just who the characters are that we are enjoying. Like you were talking about how Tendi was so irritated with all the pirate stuff, and then finally she pirates up. And like Rutherford is just so fun just because he's such a big fan of like everything.
Yeah. I love it. I think Rutherford might be my favorite character because of that.
Sure.
He seems to be the biggest fan of Star Trek, I guess. Right. That's why I feel like I relate to Rutherford the most. But yeah, not a proper Star Trek. But Star Trek, we watched the Star Trek episode. That's fine.
Yeah.
And it had DS9 in it.
Yeah.
And I think the best joke was Ransom's joke at the beginning.
Where he was talking about like, let's just circle around once more.
Well, and it was a stop the music, start the music joke. You think the gag is over when they're driving around DS9. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for the next one, episode 7, where they don't do what I told them to do.
So not next episode, but the episode after that is going to be a part 2, and it's from a part 1 from season 1. So we'll have to watch that one to be fully caught up with what's coming up. Not next week, but the week after.
Hey, and maybe they'll illuminate all of Rutherford's backstory.
Right? It'll answer all of our questions.
Maybe that's why they're not bothering to do that anymore, because we already have them. That they were just confirming everything after the last episode, and that's it.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah. Like it was all the questions that have been asked were now answered, but we just didn't know that the questions were asked, so we have all the questions.
Right. Just like Lost.
Or, in a way that it's not at all like Lost. Lost said that they would reveal everything at the very end, and then at the end they punched us in the balls and ran away.
Laughing maniacally.
Anyway.
With a bunch of cash stuck in their pants.
Yeah, and they could have had more, but they had to stop at their self-imposed deadline, even though ABC was like, please make more.
Well, I don't blame them because they didn't know what to put in there anymore, right? I mean, I guess if you're a creative person, that you could, in fact, create more things to put in your television show that everybody watches.
Yeah.
For some reason. And why they would decide, I mean, it could be one of those things that all of the main people had already signed, they'd already inked deals for their next show, right? Mm-hmm. And they wanted to get out of this bottomless pit called Lost.
Yeah, sure, where they just weren't making any money.
It's surprising there's not some sort of spinoff or continuation or something like that.
Yeah. Nobody
wants to touch it.
Right. Well, yeah. And right, not even to try to redeem it, even though there was that one webisode where... Anyway, this isn't a Lost podcast.
All right, I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
Oh, hey, but you already knew that.
Oh, nice. That's the other Tendi guy, right?
Yes. Nice. Yes.
Okay.